See, that's how people can make a profit off of something, because it's linear. You can only make a profit off of something linear. You can't really make a profit off of truth if it's the ultimate truth, because it's free. It exists in the essence of who and what you are. You can't really quantify it in a way, in a sense that is going to, if you're putting yourself up against or up above somebody else, then something is lost there. Something is wrong. It's not the deepest layer of truth that you can tap into. So this is what I'm seeing with the New Age community. This is what I'm seeing with the flat earth going mainstream. If it goes mainstream, that's just another thing. See, people see the flat earth as like an ultimate truth, but look at what would happen if the flat or when the flat earth gets co-opted by the mainstream agenda. Just imagine for this moment what they could do with that and how they're going to utilize that. Like I said before, they can just science the shit out of it, package it up into this nice little thing and sell it back to you. Next thing you know, you're in another suppressive environment. No different than what happened with the Civil Rights Act, when they said they were addressing racism and segregation and all that stuff. No, it just went underground. It got more intricate. It got more complex. And it was all about the control factor. Who controls the board? The chess game. The chess game on your soul, your mind, and your body. See, one of the main reasons why I'm on YouTube now is because I've started to realize, back when I started making videos, that this is not a linear process, and it's ultimately about how we're sharing the information to allow people to figure out their reasons of how, or their perspectives of how to interpret their reality, and then they themselves have to walk through the door of why. Because the why comes from your own personal perspective, your own ancestral connection, and your own ancestral your soul level interpretation of why things are the way they are. Nobody else can tell you as a person why you are existing the way you are existing right now. People can share with you how they are existing, how somebody else is existing, that will help people see how they are existing, and then go into the why they are existing. And you can see how I said, I'm not getting into the what, because the what is like the ego, the physical body. That's like, once you interpret the mind, then it becomes kindergarten and elementary school to understand what's happening on the physical level, because anything that manifests on the physical level comes first from the mind, and anything that comes in the mind first comes from the soul. So once you get into that understanding and interpreting of the reality from those perspectives, there's no attachment to it. Like the melanin shit. It's like, oh yeah, my melanin is popping. Well, did you make that? Did you create that with your character, with your soul? Like, no, that's part of this experience that is ultimately an alchemy from the Most High. So how the fuck can you take pride off of something that the Most High is allowing you to experience? If you don't challenge yourself to see the deepest layers of how that exist on the bridge into the why, which is the overstanding of this reality, then you're just setting up another trap. You're setting up another limitation that can be manipulated by so-called powers that be, who have prepositioned themselves to dominate and control you overall. This is what I'm seeing with the Black conscious community. This is what I'm seeing with the New Age community, the New World Order, and even the Flat Earth going mainstream. Anything can be manipulated to work against the people if the people themselves are not anchored from the empowered perspective. This is why I share the information that I share, is to help people see that you can empower yourself by reconnecting. You don't need anybody or anything to do it for you. There's not some sort of thing. It's largely about letting go of the things that weigh you down. People in the Black conscious community are weighed down by the linear interpretations of stuff like the melanin be popping and the connection with the ancestors in Egypt and all that other stuff. If you wear all those chains and all those symbols and all that other stuff, that ain't no different than a new age individual walking around with 30 crystals on their head and wearing like 10 pairs of yoga pants and doing all this yoga every day and not really tapping into what that really means. Not really going into the depths of the breath, not going into the depths of what this reality truly is. If you're still seeing it from a linear perspective, it don't matter how much information you get. It don't matter how conscious you think you are. If you still interpret your reality from a pride-filled, egoic mentality, then you ain't no different than anybody else that's sitting up on a Bill O'Reilly talking on the news, and all these other people, these celebrities, and all these other people talking about Bernie Sanders, and it's just another limited linear layer of consciousness. In order to get out of the what, you yourself have to want to get out of that. And largely a lot of people don't want to get out of that because they've prided themselves so much. They exist so in the ego or the emotional body so much that they have created another power grid over individuals. This goes back to where I was talking about the melanin in the beginning. And this goes back to other people who want to label you as racist or label you as whatever they want to label you as. They have to externalize their emotions onto you in order to control you. The melanin thing, from the melanin is popping perspective, is the same thing. Oh, I have melanin, so I'm better than you. That doesn't go into the psychological interpretation, and for sure as hell doesn't even go into the spiritual interpretations. That's, if it does at all, it's from a commercial perspective of that reality. We don't truly, because once you truly get into interpreting, see, the knowledge of melanin, the knowledge of the experience and the existence overall is one thing. If you interpret it from an egoic linear perspective, it will translate into pride. If you translate it and tap into that perspective from the understanding and the overstanding of your reality, then that will translate into the knowingness, where there is no pride there because you are not attached to it that way, because you yourself didn't do anything to create that melanin be popping shit. You yourself are an expression of the beauty of that most high experience overall. So that is where people in the so-called Black conscious community, from my perspective, get caught up in the whole like, well, you know, we have this information, we are the beginnings of humanity and all this other stuff. Okay, that is on a psychological conscious understanding of what's going on. But there's no pride in that space. There's no ego in that existence when you are truly anchored in it from the soul expression. When you are in that soul expression, that soul interpretation of that reality, then there's a detachment that comes from that, and an airiness in your experience that doesn't place you above anybody else. It doesn't separate you in any way. In fact, the higher you get in your vibration, in your frequency, in your consciousness, the closer you get to everybody else. So if people are still separating themselves from whatever perspective they want to call it, from the new age enlightened perspective, from the melanin be poppin' perspective, from the Egyptian ancestors, Black consciousness, gods of this reality, whatever it is, if you have locked yourself into a pride-filled perspective of interpreting your reality, you still got some work to do. A lot of fucking work to do. And that's not to come down on anybody. Everybody is going through it in their own way. That's only to make known that this experience is not limited. It's never ending. If you pride yourself, that means you've gotten off the train of expanding the consciousness, and you've said, well, this is it. I'm good. And anybody else who says that they're better or anything, they'll trigger you into your emotional body, or you'll see it from like a defensive perspective, so you'll have to challenge yourself. It's all old, limited, low ass vibrations. Truly interpreting this reality takes letting go of the majority of who and what you think you are. This includes all of that stuff that I just mentioned before. So like I said, when I'm making videos like this, my intention is to help people see how things are pieced together, so they can step into the realms, their soul realms, of why things are being pieced together. And when I make each video, I include, or I try to include, that perspective in as many videos as possible. So this is part of the physical thread. This is part of the psychological, how this affects people or how this exists. And then the next is how it affects us spiritually. So when I talk about when I mention a lot of the separation from culture and not understanding who and what you are personally, like physically, your race or whatever, like all this stuff, when I share information on that's not to come down on anybody or separate people. That's the intention, is to share how this reality has separated us from that understanding and that interpretation of reality, and the side effects to being separated from that reality. It is affecting us individually and collectively. And if we just allow it to be, or look the other way, or just take pride in whatever it is that we've discovered at this level of consciousness, you won't be doing anything but setting yourself up for another trap. In fact, you're trapping yourself.